Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to Legends in Leadership. And I'm Dr. Blair Ritchie. I'm the Executive Director of ISF and co-hosting the podcast. Today with me are Tyler Tallman and Jason Smith, family officers with the Carrington Group. And we begin these podcasts with a fun little leadership trivia just to test your knowledge of great leaders who, like us, have humble beginnings and are trying to make a difference in the world or have made a difference. And so, Tyler, you're up today. So what's our leadership trivia question?
Thanks, Dr. B. We're going to travel back in time today. This particular leader was born October 13th, 1925 in Grantham, England. She became the first woman to lead a major Western democracy. She was the daughter of a local businessman. She was educated at a local grammar school in Grantham called the Grantham Girls High School. And she was just the daughter of a common grocer who grew up in a very small market town that, by the way, was a long ways from the halls of power. Her family operated the grocery store. They lived in this tiny little apartment on top of that grocery store. But this particular lady, she majored in chemistry, but the most important chemistry the world came to know was that her soul was made of iron. Now, I don't know if that's a clue or not, but we'll be back at the end of today's show to talk about the leader who was a legend whose soul was made of iron and give you that answer. So back to you, Dr. Blair.
Very nice, Tyler. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, we're excited today about our guest today, Mike Panebianco. Mike is a pilot with Southwest Airlines and is also the creator, founder, lead mission guide for a project called Mission Ready Human, which is a fun little project that I'm very close to. A toolkit for mentors and parents and teachers, guides raising some pretty confident kids. Mike, thanks for being with us on our Legends broadcast today.
It is an honor to be here with you, and anything that has the title Legends in it, I feel a little bit out of place, but I'm certainly glad to be brought into your show, and I hope I do not disappoint you.
By the end of this show, you will be a legend. We guarantee that.
Outstanding.
Hey, we love pilots. I mean, we all fly. So tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, how it is you got to fly big planes for a big company.
Sure. Well, it goes back. I grew up on a small farm in upstate New York, a potato farm. My dad's a third-generation potato farmer. Family immigrated from Italy. My mother's family immigrated from Germany and met somewhere in central New York. And just outside of Syracuse to the east, we had a potato farm. And I grew up working there, learning hard work and skills from my dad. You learn how to work with your hands and fix things and build things. My dad he is my hero. Just growing up watching him do his thing, and he and my uncle taking over after my grandfather had passed and taking that business and turning it into something really successful, and in turn turning it into a packaging operation. We had a fleet of trucks. I was fascinated. I was a little bit of a pain because as a kid I was fascinated with vehicles. Anything that moved, I had to be on it. I had to figure out how it worked. We had forklifts and tractors and bulldozers and nice. Tractor trailers, and my dad, probably until I was about 17 years old, get out of that, stop moving that, you don't break anything. So that fascination with things of that nature, I had always had this fascination with airplanes, always built models and flown them around the house, and just never really connected in my head that would be my path. It was the dream, like looking into space and saying someday. We lived underneath the Arrival corridor into Syracuse, and there was an Air National Guard base there. They had A-10 Thunderbolts, really cool airplane. Always wanted to fly that airplane. Didn't get the opportunity, but looking up while you're sitting on a tractor saying someday, that was my thing. And I ended up a freshman in college and one of the guys in my Army ROTC class said, hey, would you be interested in starting a flying club? And I'm like, sure. What's a flying club? How do we do that? I mean, don't you have to be like in the military to fly airplane? He's like, no, there's a little flight school right here at the Niagara Frontier Airport, and they'll do an intro package for $25. So on March 27th, 1990, a flight instructor named Nancy Brose took me in a Cessna 150, and we flew over Niagara Falls.
Wow.
And it was windy and bumpy, and I can tell you it was like, I'm not sure if this is really it for me. But the flame was lit. Signed my transfer papers, left Niagara University, and went on to Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach, Florida, and earned all my certificates and jumped into corporate aviation. I flight instructed a little bit, flew corporate charters, flew for a couple of airlines before Southwest gave me my dream shot back in 2000. And so actually it's almost 18 years to the day. Next 2 weeks from now is going to be my anniversary with Southwest Airlines, so it'll be 18 years. And I upgraded to captain, and on the same day that I took my first flight, March 27th, 2007, I became a captain at Southwest Airlines. So 17 years to the day from my very first flight till the day I passed my captain's check ride.
Little different type of aircraft.
It was slightly
between those
different.
two experiences.
It makes a lot more noise, but you don't hear it as much, and it pays better. so it was really it's a dream job. It's a great company to work for. I love flying airplanes. It's much more fulfilling than driving the truck over the road when I was working for the farm and paying my college tuition off and doing those things. But it's a dream job. Just sheer will to get there. Wasn't very gifted in school in any way. But
let's talk about that journey, because you always talk about, are you living the dream or just working at a job? And you're
Right.
pursuing a dream, but those dreams don't just happen. I mean, there's lots of just struggle and challenges. Talk about some of those that you faced that you had to fight through.
Right. So again, I look back at my academic career, and if you ask anybody, I think my 30th high school reunion was Saturday, and if there was a "Where are they now?" most people would go, "Are you kidding?" Because they remember me from way back when. And academically, it wasn't special, but I learned really how to work from my dad and my grandfather. In our hometown, they were noted for starting the fire department, the volunteer fire department. My dad, just worked around the clock. When I was a kid, I don't remember seeing him very much because I knew he worked a few jobs. He'd go back and forth between his day job and then working at the farm on the second shift when they do harvesting and planting. So hard work was the key to my success, and I would not quit. And I usually will tell somebody, who says, you may be able to outwork me, but you won't want to try it a second time, because I'll give you a run and I'll still show up for the next one and the next one and the next one, and if that's what it takes. So going through flight training, those challenges for me where academics were maybe a little bit out of my reach, I could visualize how I wanted to fly the airplane, and that was really good for me, but I really had to work a lot harder than everyone else to get through the academics. And so I just set small goals. I'm going to get through this stage of my flight training, and then I'll get through the next stage of my flight training. And the belief system started backing up the performance, and it carried me through. So, it's how you think about it. What one man can do, another man can do, and you go from there. And you just adjust your work schedule and try to work smart and not too hard. I set the record for working too hard and not too smart, and I'd like to see other people do it the other way so that you don't have to wear yourself out to get there. There's no swath of destruction behind you when you finally hit your goal. You're like, yes, and then you turn around and the entire world is on fire behind you. It's like, oh, well, he got there. Here's an easier way. So that's what I'm dedicated to now.
Talk about your family a little bit. Kiddos? Yeah,
so I'm married to Carrie. Carrie is my spouse who has probably a sore neck from going, but she's a wonderful lady. We met flying for the airline. She was a flight attendant, worked at Continental Express. We were married in 1999. We have two sons. One is Anthony, and he is 15 and an amazing guitar player. And then we have a 12-year-old named Jack. And Jackson is he's starting to become quite the trumpet player, which somehow he must have seen pictures of his old man in the marching band and now he's really into it. So the boys are great. They're into archery and doing great in school. Just a few days into the new school year, they're awesome.
So some of the things you picked up from your dad and grandfather along the way, how is it that you want to try and communicate that to your boys to make sure they're picking up the same work values and habits that you developed?
So I think they see a lot. I show them a lot. And usually, kids are amazing that way. I think they pick up, they watch what you do, not so much what you say, but what you do. So I think it's really important that, burning the midnight oil, they see it. They see how many hours I put in. They see, I don't just fly airplanes. I also work in an executive spot in the union. They listen to the tone of my phone calls. I think as important as hard work is, it's how you treat other people, and that's something that I need them to see, to emulate and go forward, because I think that's the nature of success is how you treat relationships in your life, and that was something that my grandfather and my father, and then that was on both sides, on my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family. People will, if you ask them what they remember about my grandparents, they will tell you how wonderful they were to be around and how they made them feel. And so that would be something that I'd really want to pass on to my kids.
So I'm curious, Mike. You're the president of the union.
No, don't give me promotions. I'm only a vice president.
Vice president. Excuse me, vice president of the Southwest Airlines Pilot Association.
Correct.
And two totally different leadership roles that you have. One is in a cockpit, and you got to make sure that you get however many passengers from point A to point B safely. What have you learned on the other side of the fence in this more office role, boardroom, executive role that you're in now? What are the challenges there, and what have you really learned from that that's propelled you?
Well, I have to say, I think the carryover, the difference is that most of what I do when you deal with when you have 9,500 members of pilot members of the association, you see what they go through on a day-to-day basis. So you don't always see the shiny side of things. You see, illnesses in their families, deaths in their families, challenges that they have at work. I've faced it myself when you have health challenges and you have to overcome, because when you make your living with a privilege rather than a right, things can go wrong. And as you gentlemen all know me you've known me for a couple of years now, I've faced those challenges and had my ability to fly revoked by the FAA. So I see those challenges and I deal with those much more intimately. When I'm in the airplane, it's a bit more teamwork, and we're so standardized. I could walk into an airplane with all the crew members, including the first officer, that I don't know and have never met, and we all perform the same way. We're standardized and trained to do the same thing so that we're interchangeable. Every aircraft that Southwest Airlines flies, we at one point had 4 different types of 737s. I could walk into any one of those airplanes and sit down with any other employee of Southwest Airlines, flight crew member, and we would all know exactly what we were doing. And then you get into the role in the office where you're inventing some solutions and you're building teams, and everyone is a type A personality trying to do a job that they probably were not trained for. My pilot volunteers in the union are either elected, as I was, or they are hired to do committee work. And then we have staff members that actually get hired because they have real skills and they have resumes and things like that. So trying to build bridges between people where we're not standardized, that was a big challenge. And it just shows the need for clear guidance, good vision, the ability to work through conflict is tremendous, and that's universal, I think. Those are the biggest takeaways, is just teamwork. It works. The beautiful example is in the airplane and how it works. And you wonder, you look up front and sometimes, that you'd say, well, it doesn't really look like you guys work that hard because the airplane flies itself. Well, you see us when we are sitting at the gate. You see all the switches and the lights and everything. And, when we push back and go fly, those lights are all off. And then something happens. And an orchestra of activity takes off, but it's beautifully planned. It's masterfully trained. I'm about to go into 9 days of training in a simulator that makes you sweat. It literally activates your sympathetic nervous system, because not only is your job on the line, we have to requalify every year to keep our job, but it's so realistic now that you actually feel what the airplane is doing, and you feel the time compression and the stress that comes with it. And those simulators are so good that the FAA will allow you to use that as your primary training tool. And the first time you actually touch a 737, you will have passengers in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And not as a captain. You'll have a check airman with you as a new first officer. But when you go out and fly, that would be the first time theoretically that you ever flew a 737, and because the simulation is so good. But
I don't know if that gives me more confidence or makes me more nervous as a consumer, but
it should really. I'll tell you what, if you're free next week, come with me, and I'll put you in the back of the simulator, and you'll say, "We're good." You'll trust it. It really is amazing. Flight training today is outstanding. I wish I could show my kids that. That's one thing I wish I could take my kids to. But
Let's talk a little bit about this whole mission-ready human side of your life. I've kind of known you now for a few years, and while you have a passion for flying and all of the leadership and the teamwork that comes with that, it's so critical. You have a heart for kids that are struggling, and so tell a story about how Mission Ready Human came about and what the focus
Sure.
of that part of your journey is.
Sure. So, 2001, September 11th, 2001 was a day that most of us that were alive will never forget. And being in the aviation industry, to sit and watch your passion and your joy turned into a weapon against innocent civilians was it was a rough patch. I have friends at American and United, and I had family members in both sites. Well, 2 of the 3 sites of the 9/11 attacks, and it was a life-altering moment for me as a new Southwest pilot. Those attacks didn't hit my company, but they hit my industry and they hit my friends, and it was very close to my family. And that started an exploration. I'm a little bit of a learning addict, and on that day, some things happened to my fellow pilots, and their airplanes were taken away from them, and that started an investigation. How do we protect ourselves from this? And the entire industry went into this. How do we prevent this from ever happening again? And that exploration led me through some pretty interesting places. As you know, there are air marshals out there flying around. There are federal law enforcement officers. There are also federal flight deck officers who are armed pilots that go through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Many of us went through training of that sort and took it even further and got more specialized into systems that teach self-defense and tactics to thwart such style of attacks. And I got pretty deep into that, certified as an instructor, spent probably 10 years really immersed in that community. And in doing that, coming out of it, it's like, okay, so the likelihood of in my career of that actually ever happening to me is very low. But I've got to keep this skill set sharp because they're perishable skills. So what do I do with that? So, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to teach self-defense. And I worked with police officers and soldiers and different groups, and we'd go out and host realtors and things like that. And there was really you kind of have to chase people around. No one wants to think about it. And then the phone rings one day, and it's a mom, and she said, "I found your website, I read your blog, and I think you're my solution. Would you please call me back?" And
kind of cryptic message there.
That's odd. And I'm a mom. You're my solution. I'm married. I'm good. So I kind of went on, and then the next call came, and it started getting more detailed about what was happening to her child in school. And I saved the voice message, and every once in a while I'll play it again because you have to hear it. You have to hear the voice of a mom who says, "My child has been bullied so badly, I think we're losing him. He won't go to school." And it made me stop and think. I'm like, so how am I going to help this person? I have to help this person. They reached out. There's something here that I have to do, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I took that step towards her and said, let's just meet and talk, because I can't teach a 12-year-old the things that I teach people to survive weapon attacks from adults. And you can't teach a 12-year-old to do those things because they don't have the rudder in their value system to know when to stop, when it's not appropriate. So I would have to craft an entirely new program for them. And so what we did was, at her kitchen table, we just ran through the game. What do we need to do first? We need to change the way he thinks. His belief system has him as a target. He's got no confidence. He can't even walk with us. He wouldn't even look me in the eye when we shook hands the first time. So we have to change the way he thinks and processes. The second thing we have to do is we have to get him some awareness of himself and others and his environment. And then we have to teach him how to engage differently. And that includes up to and including defending himself, standing up for himself. We had to teach him how to build a team, make relationships, quality relationships, and then we have to teach him how to thrive through all this. We have to teach him how to survive this, survive the day, condition himself for tomorrow, and then recover from all of the stress. And that's how Mission Ready Human started. It was called No Bully Fear, and we built a little LMS and put it online so people could have those conversations with their own kids. We built a video series so they could teach self-defense in their living room using sofa pillows and things like that they had. And it took off pretty well. Parents liked it. And then it morphed because the bullying, the term bullying sometimes dissuades participation because of the stigma that comes with the word. So Mission Ready Human was the core product I create and intend to create is confidence. And that's why we changed the name and we're moving forward. So it's a conversation for you to have. They're tools to create those conversations. They're tools for you to teach and mentor and coach. And it feels great to see a young person change their life. That first student of mine was 12 years old when I got him. He is graduating college with a television production degree. Might be looking for a job. I'm always plugging for him. He became the captain of the swim team, class president.
Wow.
He did great. He did great. And several of my other students I still keep up with. Every once in a while, the moms will send an email or dad will send an email saying, "Hey, so-and-so's doing great. They're on the,
How quickly did this? How quickly did he turn around? Like how quickly did you start seeing results in this program?
So I worked with him over about 10 weeks, and I told him, and he was aware, and his mom was aware. I said, it'll get worse before it gets better because when you become a target of somebody, other people see that, and they use you as a stepping stone to the next level of, social integration, if you will. And I said, a good bully is, and the kid that was bullying him was a pro. Had been moved school to school. He was well versed in his craft, and he didn't like the fact that this child was now standing up for himself. So he tried harder and harder, and it got harder. And he did have to go through some pretty rough stuff. He never had to use physical violence to undo the system, and quite frankly, his part of the program was to teach his mother to build a team within the community to address the school and law enforcement, and his ability to build friendships that would, there were people that would stand up for him, and for him to be able to say, I'm not going to take this anymore. So it took a little while to get him turned around, and it was rough. And he'd contact me and he'd say, I'm having some rough days, and we'd have to recenter him and get him back to, thinking into the future. I always say we throw an anchor into the future and put a good strong chain on it, because when things get rough, you got to put your head down and just go hand over hand and keep pulling, because that chain is where you need to be. It's going where you need to be. And if it's rough right now, that's that work ethic that I like to put out there. So
you've talked a lot too. We've great story, by the way. It's one of my favorite stories because this is something that I think hits so close to home for so many parents that are dealing with that. But bullying extends way past, teenage years up, into college. It goes all the way into corporate America, right? So talk a little bit about that. It's
alive and well. I see it on multiple levels. We have a lot of very strong personalities. Even in my job, we have personality conflicts. One of the committees that I oversee at the Pilots Association is a professional standards committee. And when you have strong type A, in charge, pilot types working together, that can get away from some people sometimes. And they forget the dignity and respect that you owe another professional. And we deal with that, with a committee with intervention. And also in office politics, I would bet you could walk through this building and find an office with someone who uses a little bit of power and a little bit of aggressive language or, positional influence to make somebody feel like less a human being. And it's just a human condition. It doesn't go away. It's never going to be, you'll never be bully proof. You'll always have to, it's like fear. It's always going to be there. You just have to manage it. And so that confidence is what I use as the solution, the recommendation, the prescription is what you need more confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. So it's situational though.
At ISF, we work with foster care kids who age out of that system, and along their journey, they've had to endure a lot of bullying. And one of the things that we do with mentors is to come alongside these young people and really invest in their lives. And the mission-ready human side of that really connects with our mentors because of that need for functional competence.
Mm-hmm.
And talk a little bit about the value of mentoring and the difference mentoring can make.
Oh, it's such a huge difference for young people. The future is tomorrow or a week from now, or maybe this summer, Christmas. They don't go very far out into the future, and so giving them a vision that they can really latch onto, and whether it's short term or long term, I think mentoring. You're not always the right mentor for the job. You want to get a mentor that can help them in their short-term goals, and maybe have several mentors around that can get them through career goals or life issues, conflicts in family, self-esteem issues, things like that. But to have not someone to tell you what to do, but say, you know what, I've fallen in that hole. I felt that. Maybe our situations weren't the same, but I felt just like that, and here are some of the things that I did to get out of that hole. And that's really someone to stand and be able, to trust. Number one, it's a real relationship, and if it's not a real relationship, it's really not mentoring. It's almost coaching or maybe even teaching. So, to invest yourself into another human being and feel what they feel and share with your path how to get through that. I think that's a huge part of being a good mentor, and so I have a very specific skill set that works with some young people. And I would direct them to people who I would say, this is someone you need to talk to. This is someone you need to know on a personal level, and that mentor is perfect for that situation. So,
well, we're jazzed at ISF because, a little plug here, we're working with Mike and doing some actual mentoring podcasts that will equip mentors along Mission Ready Human and do that. So people can check out Mission Ready Human, Google that, I guess.
Sure, missionreadyhuman.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. And I have a YouTube channel. There's not much there. I don't do much video because I have a face for radio, so I'm more of a podcast guy. I have a podcast on SoundCloud under my name, Mike Panebianco. But I'm going to move it out there under Mission Ready Human. I was trying to get a little bit of content to it,
cool.
a little bit of a season there.
One of the closing questions we ask our guests are just what leadership book was just impactful for you, biggest nugget out of that leadership book, and just kind of leave us with something that really inspired you on your journey.
Gotcha. So I'm a big Dale Carnegie guy, and I know it's 100 years in the past that this stuff had originated, and the book is somewhat oddly written for people of modern English with the way people speak, but I would say that the How to Win Friends and Influence People has been the biggest impact on my life. I still have it. It's tabbed. It sits on my desk, and I carry the little golden book. And I would say the very first nugget out of How to Win Friends and Influence People is never criticize, condemn, or complain. And if you could live that for 1 week, you are my hero. I'm still chasing that goal after a decade of being a Dale Carnegie guy, and I would leave that with you. I think that will improve the quality of your life and the relationships around you.
Wow, that's
Good
gold
stuff.
That's gold, Mike. Thanks. Well, before we go, we want to come back to our trivia question, Tyler. So we're trying to figure out who this legend in leadership you got for us.
So we were talking about the lady whose soul was made of iron. So she was the longest serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century. And the first woman to hold that office. A Soviet journalist dubbed her the Iron Lady, a nickname that became associated with her uncompromising politics and leadership style. Lady Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister of Great Britain, was just an unwavering leader who dealt with a lot of, I guess you could say, folks that may or may not have liked all of her political thoughts, but she remained unwavered and focused on the things that were important. And I'll tell you, when I was reading a little bit about her deeper in history, what I took away is that you're not always going to be, people aren't always going to be the biggest fan of you in leadership. And sometimes you've got to make tough decisions that long term are going to have a huge impact. And that's what she did that I thought was huge, even though she may or may not have been liked by everybody. So, Margaret Thatcher.
Good. Thanks, Tyler. That was a great one. Well, folks, that'll wrap it up for today's Legends in Leadership podcast. On behalf of my co-hosts, Jason and Tyler, and our guest, Mike Panebianco, thank you again, Mike. Great stuff. And I just want to leave you with John Quincy Adams' famous words, basically when he said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are a leader.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by ISF and Carrington Group. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphan youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. Google International Student Foundation to learn more. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. Google Carrington Group Dallas, Texas to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.